I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I'm terrible, but there's something about wanting more from life that nobody seems to understand. Everyone's calling me selfish now, saying I threw away a perfectly good marriage for nothing, but they don't know what I was feeling. They don't know about the conversation that happened 3 months before everything fell apart, or what my husband said to me in the dark one night that made me realize I'd been living someone else's life for 7 years. The worst part isn't that Jake handed me divorce papers when I asked for space. The worst part is what I did during that space, and why I can never tell him the real reason I needed it in the first place. I'm going to tell you everything, including the part that makes me look like the villain everyone thinks I am. But you need to understand how I got there first, because the version of events that's been circulating among our friends and family is missing one crucial piece of information. And once I tell you, you'll understand why I've kept it secret, even if it means everyone hates me. I was 23 when I met Jake, fresh out of college and working my first real job at a marketing firm in Portland. He was 26, already established in his career as a software engineer, already knew what he wanted from life. I found that attractive back then, that certainty. I was still figuring out who I was, what I wanted, where I fit in the world. Jake had answers to all those questions, at least for himself, and somehow being around him made me feel like I had answers too. We got married 2 years later. It was a beautiful wedding, everything I thought I wanted. My mom cried happy tears. His parents gave a toast about how perfect we were together. All our friends got drunk and danced and told us how lucky we were to have found each other so young. I remember standing there in my white dress, looking at Jake in his suit, thinking this must be what happiness feels like. For the first few years it was good, it was stable. Jake got promoted twice. I moved up to senior coordinator at my firm. We bought a house in the suburbs with a backyard and good schools nearby, even though we weren't planning on kids for a few more years. We had game nights with friends. We took vacations to beach resorts where we drank fruity cocktails and had sex with the windows open. We were the couple other people envied. But somewhere around year 5, I started feeling like I was watching my life happen to someone else. I'd wake up next to Jake and think, is this it? Is this all there is? I'd sit in our beautiful house with our nice furniture and our meal-planned dinners and feel like I was suffocating under the weight of everything being exactly as it should be. I never told Jake about this feeling. How could I? What was I supposed to say? Hey honey, our perfect life is making me want to scream into a pillow. He'd done everything right, we'd done everything right. There was no reason for me to feel this way, which made it even worse because I couldn't justify it to myself, let alone to him. Then I turned 30. I know that sounds click, but something about that birthday hit me differently. I kept thinking about all the things I'd never done. I'd never lived alone. I'd never traveled by myself. I'd never spent a Saturday doing absolutely nothing I didn't want to do. I'd gone from my parents' house to college dorms to living with Jake. I'd never just been me by myself, figuring out what I actually wanted instead of what I was supposed to want. I started following these travel bloggers on Instagram, women who'd sold everything and moved to Bali or Thailand or Costa Rica. They'd post pictures of themselves doing yoga on beaches, eating street food in night markets, learning to surf or speak new languages. The comments were always full of people saying things like, I wish I could do that, or maybe someday, but I kept thinking, why not now? What was actually stopping me? Jake noticed I was on my phone more. He'd ask what I was looking at and I'd say, nothing, just scrolling, because I didn't know how to explain that I was watching videos of women living in vans and calling it freedom. He wouldn't understand. Jake's idea of a good vacation was a resort with room service and a golf course. He never felt that pull to just go to see what else was out there. The conversation I mentioned earlier, the one that happened 3 months before everything fell apart, it was on a random Tuesday night in March. We were in bed, both on our phones, that comfortable silence that couples fall into. Out of nowhere, Jake said, I think we should start trying for a baby. My stomach dropped. We talked about kids in abstract terms, the way you do when you're planning a future that still feels far away. But the way he said it, so casual, like he was suggesting we try a new restaurant, it made me realize he saw this as the obvious next step. Marriage, house, baby. The progression was clear to him, inevitable even. I thought we were waiting until we were more established, I said carefully. Babe, we're 30 and 27. We have a house, good jobs, savings. What are we waiting for? I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound terrible. I'm waiting to feel like this is my life and not a script I'm following. I'm waiting to figure out who I am outside of being your wife. I'm waiting to do literally anything spontaneous or adventurous or just for me. So instead I said, can we talk about this more? I just need some time to think. He kissed my forehead and said sure, no pressure, but I could tell he thought I'd come around. To him, there was nothing to think about. This was the plan. This is what people did. That night after he fell asleep, I lay there in the dark having a full panic attack. The thought of getting pregnant, of adding another irreversible commitment to my life before I'd figured out what I wanted from it, made me feel like the walls were closing in. I went to the bathroom and sat on the floor and cried as quietly as I could. The next morning I started seriously thinking about what it would mean to take a break. Not a break from Jake necessarily, just a break from the life we'd built. Space to figure out what I actually wanted instead of what I was supposed to want. I told myself it was reasonable that plenty of people took sabbaticals or gap years or solo trips. It didn't have to mean anything bad about my marriage, but I didn't bring it up right away. I waited. I researched. I looked into temporary leave from work, subletting our house, costs of living in different places. I joined online forums for people who'd taken career breaks. I made spreadsheets and budgets and timelines, like if I could make it logical enough, practical enough, it would be okay. Just when I thought I had a plan, Jake's mom got sick. Breast cancer stage 2, good prognosis but scary nonetheless. Jake was a wreck. His parents lived 2 hours away and he started driving down every weekend to help his dad. I went with him most times, bringing casseroles and sitting with his mom during chemo, being the supportive wife. It was during this time that I met Marcus. This is the part where you're going to start judging me, and I get it. But just remember, I'm telling you everything because you need to understand how I ended up where I did. This isn't me trying to justify it. This is me trying to explain it. Marcus was a nurse at the cancer center. He was 34, recently divorced, had a daughter he saw every other weekend. He wasn't classically handsome, but he had this energy, this aliveness that I found magnetic. He actually listened when you talked, asked follow-up questions, seemed genuinely interested in what you had to say. We started talking during my mother-in-law's appointments. Small talk at first, then longer conversations when Jake was in the room with his mom, and I was waiting outside. Marcus told me about his divorce, how he and his ex-wife had married young and grown into different people. How it was painful but necessary, how he was rebuilding his life and finally figuring out who he was outside of being someone's husband. It was like he was describing everything I felt but hadn't been able to articulate. Don't you feel guilty though? I asked once. Like maybe you should have tried harder? I used to, he said. But then I realized staying in something that wasn't right was actually more selfish. I was wasting her time too, keeping her in a marriage with someone who wasn't fully present. Sometimes the brave thing is admitting the truth, even when the truth is complicated. I thought about that conversation for weeks. Was I being selfish by staying with Jake when I felt this way? Or was I being selfish for wanting to leave a good thing just because I was restless? Nothing physical happened with Marcus during this time. I want to be clear about that. But emotionally, I was investing in those conversations in a way that probably crossed a line. I started looking forward to the appointments, making sure I looked nice, thinking about things I wanted to talk to him about. Jake was so focused on his mom that he didn't notice I was lighter on those days, more engaged. His mom's treatment went well. By July, she was in remission and things started returning to normal. Except I didn't want normal anymore. I'd spent months talking to Marcus about alternative ways of living, about taking risks, about not settling for comfortable when you could have fulfilling. And I'd spent months watching Jake be exactly who he'd always been, steady, reliable, and completely content with the life we had. That's when I decided I needed to ask for space. Real space, not just a weekend away. Time to figure out what I wanted without the weight of Jake's expectations or our shared life influencing every thought. I planned how I'd bring it up. I'd explain it wasn't about him, that I just needed to do some growing on my own. I'd suggest maybe 6 months, a temporary thing where I could travel or stay with friends or just be by myself for a while. We could still talk, still be married, but I needed room to breathe. Looking back, I can see how naive that was. How could I expect him to just accept his wife wanting to leave for 6 months? But at the time, I genuinely thought he'd understand if I just explained it right. I chose a Friday night in late August. We'd had a nice dinner, we were sitting on the couch with wine. I took a deep breath and said, I need to talk to you about something. The look on his face, God, like he already knew it was going to be bad. I've been doing a lot of thinking, I started, about my life and what I want, and I think I need some space to figure things out. Space, he repeated flatly. Not like a separation, I said quickly, even though that's exactly what it was. Just time for me to explore who I am outside of us. I feel like I've never had that, I've never just been on my own. So you want to leave me? No, not leave you, just take a break to work on myself. He set his wine down very carefully. How long of a break? I was thinking maybe 6 months. I could travel or stay with Sarah in Seattle, just have some time to. 6 months. His voice was so quiet. You want to leave our marriage for 6 months to find yourself. It's not leaving the marriage, it's just, what the hell else would you call it, Emma? His voice cracked. We've been together 7 years, we have a life, a house. We're supposed to be trying for a baby and you want to go backpack through Europe or whatever the fuck you think is going to make you happy. It's not about Europe, I said, even though I definitely looked at flights to Spain. It's about me needing to figure out who I am. You're my wife, that's who you are, we built this together. But what if I don't know who I am outside of that? He looked at me like I'd slapped him. Is there someone else? My heart started racing. No, this isn't about someone else. Because if you're cheating on me and trying to dress it up as some soul-searching bullshit, I'm not cheating on you. technically true. I hadn't done anything physical with Marcus. I just need space to think. We went back and forth like this for over an hour. Him asking what he'd done wrong, me insisting it wasn't about him. Him saying marriage meant working through things together, me saying I couldn't work through this with him hovering. It got heated, voices raised, both of us crying at different points. Finally he said, I can't do this. I can't sit around for 6 months wondering if my wife's going to come back or if she's going to decide she wants a different life. That's not fair to me. So what are you saying? I'm saying if you need space to explore, you can have it, but I'm not going to wait around like some backup plan while you figure your shit out. Jake, please. No, Emma, you don't get to have it both ways. You don't get to keep me on the hook while you go find yourself or whatever. If you want space, you can have all the space you need. As a divorced woman. I thought he was bluffing. I really did. I thought if I just gave him the night to calm down, we could talk about it more rationally in the morning. So I went to sleep in the guest room, and when I woke up the next day, he was gone. He stayed at his friend Derek's place that whole weekend. Wouldn't answer my calls. Finally texted me Sunday night saying his lawyer would be in touch. I still thought he was trying to scare me, make me take back what I'd said. Then on Wednesday, a process server showed up at my office and handed me divorce papers in front of my coworkers, citing irreconcilable differences. He'd already filed. I called him immediately, hands shaking. You actually filed for divorce? You said you needed space to explore. I'm giving it to you. I didn't mean I wanted a divorce. What did you think was going to happen, Emma? I was just going to smile and wave while you took off for half a year. Put my life on hold while you decided if you wanted to be married anymore? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, and I'm not interested in that kind of marriage. So yeah, I filed. Sign the papers or don't, but I'm done. He hung up. I sat there in my car in the parking lot, completely stunned. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I'd asked for space and somehow ended up with divorce papers instead. I called my best friend Sarah, told her everything. She was sympathetic, but even she seemed confused by what I'd expected. I mean, you basically told him you wanted to leave. What guy is going to be okay with that? I didn't want to leave forever, just for a little while. But why? What's so terrible about your life that you need to escape it? I couldn't answer that in a way that made sense. How could I explain this restlessness, this feeling of being trapped in a life I'd chosen but no longer wanted? My parents were worse. My mom called me crying, saying she didn't understand how I could throw away such a good man. My dad barely spoke to me, just said he was disappointed and hung up. Jake's family completely cut me off, which I expected, but it still hurt. His mom sent me one text saying she thought I was better than this, and that she was glad she'd recovered so she didn't have to watch me destroy her son's life. All our mutual friends took his side. I went from having a full social calendar to being uninvited from game nights and dinner parties. People I'd known for years stopped responding to my messages. One friend told me point blank that what I'd done was cruel and she couldn't support it. Within 2 weeks of asking for space, I'd lost my husband, my in-laws, most of my friends, and my parents' respect. All because I'd been honest about feeling trapped. I thought about just signing the papers and giving up. Maybe everyone was right and I was being selfish and stupid. Maybe I should just apologize and beg Jake to take me back and forget I'd ever said anything. But then I'd remember that feeling of suffocation, of watching my life happen to someone else, and I couldn't make myself do it. Even if everyone hated me, even if I was wrong, I couldn't go back to pretending I was happy in a life that felt like it was slowly killing me. So I did the thing I'd wanted to do in the first place. I took a leave of absence from work. I put my stuff in storage since Jake was keeping the house, and I left. I didn't go to Europe or Bali or any of those Instagram-worthy destinations. I went to stay with Sarah in Seattle like I'd mentioned to Jake. She had a spare room and agreed to let me crash while I figured things out, though she made it clear she thought I was making a mistake. For the first few weeks, I was a mess. I'd wake up and reach for Jake and remember he was filing for divorce. I'd see something funny and go to text him before remembering we weren't talking. I'd cycle between thinking I'd made the biggest mistake of my life and feeling relieved that I'd finally been honest. Sarah tried to be supportive, but I could tell she didn't really get it. She had a boyfriend she was happy with, a job she liked, a simple life that worked for her. She'd ask what I was doing with my days, and I'd say things like thinking or figuring stuff out, and she'd give me this look like I was wasting time. Then one night, about a month after I'd arrived in Seattle, I went to a coffee shop to get out of Sarah's apartment. I was sitting there with my laptop, mindlessly scrolling through travel blogs again when someone said my name. It was Marcus. I had no idea he lived in Seattle, we'd never talked about it. But there he was, standing by my table with a surprised smile, holding a coffee. Emma, what are you doing here? I explained the whole thing, how I'd asked Jake for space and ended up with divorce papers, how I was staying with a friend and trying to figure out my next move. He listened with that same intent focus I remembered from the cancer center. Can I sit? He asked. We ended up talking for 3 hours. He told me he'd actually been living in Seattle for the past month, had taken a new job at a hospital here to be closer to his daughter who'd moved with his ex-wife. He asked about Jake, about how I was handling everything. He didn't judge me the way everyone else had, he just listened. You did a brave thing, he said at one point. A lot of people stay in situations that don't fit anymore because it's easier than facing the unknown. Everyone thinks I'm selfish. Maybe, or maybe you're just honest enough to admit what a lot of people feel but won't say out loud. We exchanged numbers. He said to call if I needed someone to talk to who understood. I said I would, thinking I probably wouldn't. I called him the next day. We started spending time together. Coffee at first, then walks around the city, then dinners that felt increasingly like dates even though neither of us said that's what they were. I was still technically married even though Jake had made it clear we were done. It felt like a gray area, like I was doing something wrong but also like my marriage was already over, so what did it matter? Sarah noticed. Are you seeing that nurse from Portland? We're just friends. Emma, you're getting dressed up to go get coffee, you're not just friends. I'm still married. Barely, and whose fault is that? She wasn't wrong. I'd asked for space and Jake had given me a divorce instead. I hadn't wanted this outcome, but here we were. Was I supposed to put my life on hold indefinitely out of respect for a marriage that was already ending? Marcus and I had our first kiss 6 weeks after I moved to Seattle. We'd gone to dinner and walked along the waterfront and he'd said something funny and I'd laughed and then we were kissing and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally I could breathe. I should tell you, I said after, the divorce isn't final yet. We're still technically married. I know, he said. Is that okay, that we're doing this? I thought about Jake, about how he'd handed me divorce papers instead of trying to understand what I needed. About how he'd made it clear he was done with me, about how everyone had already decided I was the villain anyway. Yeah, I said, it's okay. We started officially dating after that. I know how that sounds, I know what you're thinking, but in my mind my marriage was over. Jake had ended it when he filed those papers. This wasn't cheating, it was moving on. Of course, that's not how anyone else saw it. Jake found out through a mutual friend who saw pictures on my Instagram. I'd posted a photo Marcus took of me at Pike Place Market, nothing obviously romantic, but apparently someone connected the dots. Jake called me for the first time in 2 months. Are you fucking kidding me? No hello, just straight to anger. You're already with someone else. It's not like that. How long has this been going on? Was he the reason you wanted space? No, I met him when your mom was sick, but nothing happened until after you filed for divorce. Bullshit. You don't just meet someone and start dating them 2 months later unless something was already there. He wasn't wrong. Something had been there even if it was just emotional, but I couldn't admit that without proving everyone right about me. You filed for divorce, I said instead. You made it clear we were done. What did you expect me to do, stay single forever? I expected you to take the space you said you needed, not hop into bed with the first guy who gave you attention. That's not what happened. Clearly it is. Jesus, Emma, I knew you were selfish, but I didn't think you were a cheater too. I didn't cheat on you. Sure, you just emotionally connected with another man while we were married, asked for space to explore, and immediately started dating him the second you left, but you didn't cheat, right? He hung up. I sat there shaking, Marcus watching me with concern. That bad? He thinks I cheated on him. He thinks this whole thing was about you. Was it? Marcus asked quietly. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say this was about me finding myself, about needing space from a life that didn't fit anymore. But in that moment I couldn't be sure. Had I wanted space to explore my feelings for Marcus? Had I been emotionally cheating without fully admitting it to myself? I don't know, I whispered. The worst part was that Jake told everyone. Within days, the narrative had shifted from Emma selfishly abandoned her husband to Emma was having an emotional affair and left her husband for another man. My mom called me in tears again, saying she didn't raise me to be this person. Friends I'd already lost sent me angry messages about how they knew there had to be someone else. Jake's mom sent a message saying I'd manipulated her son and broken her heart while she was fighting cancer. I tried to defend myself on social media, posted a long explanation about how I'd asked for space to work on myself, how Jake had filed for divorce before anything happened with Marcus, how I hadn't cheated. The comments were brutal. People called me a liar, a narcissist, a cheater trying to rewrite history. Someone made a burner account just to tell me I was the reason their faith in marriage was destroyed. I deleted everything and went private on all my accounts, but the damage was done. Everyone I knew thought I'd had an affair and destroyed a good marriage for selfish reasons. Sarah asked me to move out. She said she couldn't be around someone who'd do what I did, that it went against her values. I tried to explain that it wasn't how it looked, but she said the timeline spoke for itself. I'd asked for space, immediately moved to a city where Marcus happened to live, and started dating him within weeks. How was that not premeditated? I moved into a tiny studio apartment that took most of my savings. Marcus offered to let me stay with him, but I said no. I needed to prove to myself I could be independent. That this wasn't about running from one man to another. Except it kind of felt like it was. I'd gone from living with my parents to living with Jake to living with Sarah to being with Marcus almost constantly. I still hadn't done the thing I'd said I needed to do, which was figure out who I was by myself. But every time I thought about taking a break from Marcus to focus on myself, I'd panic. He was the only person who didn't think I was terrible. He was the only one who listened to me without judgment, who made me feel like wanting more from life wasn't selfish. Losing him felt like it would mean being completely alone with everyone hating me. So I stayed with him. We fell into a relationship that looked a lot like the one I'd left, except in a different city with a different person. We'd have dinner together most nights. We'd spend weekends doing couple things. We'd talk about future plans, moving in together eventually, what a life together might look like. It was good. Marcus was good. He was more adventurous than Jake, more willing to try new things and have deep conversations. We talked about philosophy and meaning and purpose. We stayed up late discussing our fears and dreams. It felt more real than my marriage had in years. But sometimes I'd wake up next to him and feel that same suffocating feeling I'd felt with Jake. Like I was in a relationship because being alone was scary, not because I'd actually figured out what I wanted. Like I'd traded one life I'd fallen into for another one without ever doing the self-exploration I'd said I needed. The divorce was finalized 4 months after Jake filed. He'd let me keep my car and half our savings, which was more than generous considering how everything had gone down. I signed the papers in my studio apartment, Marcus sitting next to me on the couch. "How do you feel?" he asked. "I don't know, relieved, sad, guilty?" "You shouldn't feel guilty. You were honest about what you needed. That's more than most people can say." Was it though? Had I really been honest? Or had I dressed up what I wanted in language about self-exploration and personal growth when really I just wanted out, wanted something new, wanted the exciting feeling of a fresh relationship? I got drunk that night, something I rarely did. Marcus was working a night shift, so I was alone with a bottle of wine and my thoughts. I ended up calling Jake. He answered, which surprised me. "Emma, the divorce is final," I said, words slurring a little. "I know. I got the paperwork today too." "I'm sorry," I said and started crying. "I'm so sorry for how everything happened. You deserved better." "Yeah," he said quietly, "I did. I didn't cheat on you. I need you to know that. Nothing physical happened with Marcus until after you filed. But something emotional happened before. You can't tell me it didn't." "I don't know, maybe. I was confused and you seemed so sure about everything," and he listened in a way that felt different, and I don't know, Jake. "I don't know what happened or how I ended up here." There was a long silence. Then he said, "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emma. I really do, because you gave up a lot to look for it." He hung up. I sat there on my floor, drunk and crying, thinking about what he'd said. What was I looking for exactly? I'd said I needed space to figure out who I was, but I hadn't done that. I just jumped into a new relationship in a new city and called it growth. When Marcus came home that night, I was passed out on the couch. He carried me to bed, which was sweet. In the morning, he asked if I was okay, and I said yes, just processing the divorce. He didn't push, just made me breakfast and kissed my forehead and went about his day. That's when I realized what had been bothering me about our relationship. He was perfect. Too perfect. He never pushed back, never challenged me, never made me uncomfortable. Jake had done that, made me defend my opinions and think harder about what I believed. With Marcus, everything was easy agreement and validation. I started to wonder if I'd been attracted to him because he made me feel justified in leaving, not because he was actually right for me. He told me wanting more from life was brave, that admitting the truth was noble. He'd made my selfishness feel like courage. But maybe it was just selfishness. I pulled back a little after that, started spending more time alone in my studio. Marcus noticed but didn't say anything at first. He'd ask if I wanted to have dinner and I'd say I needed to do some thinking. He'd invite me to meet his daughter and I'd make excuses. I could see the hurt in his eyes, but I didn't know how to explain what I was feeling. Finally, about 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, he confronted me. "Are you having second thoughts about us?" "I don't know what I'm having," I said honestly. "I feel like I left Jake to figure out who I am, but then I immediately got into a relationship with you and I still haven't done that." "So what are you saying? You want to break up?" "I don't know, maybe I need to actually be alone for a while, like really alone, not just living separately but dating someone." He looked devastated. "So I was just a rebound, something to make leaving your husband easier." "No, it's not like that." "Then what is it like, Emma? Because from where I'm standing, you left your marriage saying you needed space to grow, immediately started dating me, and now you're saying you need space from me too. At what point do you think maybe the problem isn't everyone else? Maybe it's you?" That hit hard because he was right. I had a pattern. Get into a relationship, feel trapped, want out, repeat. I hadn't dealt with whatever was making me feel this way, I just kept running from it. "I think I need therapy," I said. "Yeah," he agreed. "I think you do, but I can't wait around while you figure out if you want to be with me. I did that with my ex-wife and it destroyed me. So if you need space, take it, but I'm not going to be here when you're done." He left, just like Jake had, except this time I couldn't even blame him. This time I knew it was completely my fault. I started therapy the next week. Found someone who specialized in relationship patterns and identity issues. In our first session, she asked me to describe who I was without referencing any relationships. I couldn't do it. Every description I gave involved being someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's girlfriend, someone's friend. I had no idea who I was as just Emma. That's what we're going to work on, she said. Over the next several months, therapy became my entire focus. We unpacked my relationship with my parents, how I'd always been a people pleaser, how I'd built my identity around being what others needed. We talked about Jake, about how I'd let him define our life because I didn't know what I wanted. We talked about Marcus, about how I'd used his validation to avoid doing real self-work. It was brutal and uncomfortable, and I cried more than I had in years. But slowly, I started to understand myself better. I started to see patterns I'd been repeating since childhood. I started to identify what I actually wanted versus what I thought I should want. I got a new job, something completely different from marketing. Started working at a nonprofit doing community outreach. It paid less but felt more meaningful. I took a pottery class, something I'd always been curious about. I started hiking on weekends by myself, just me and my thoughts and nature. I stopped posting on social media entirely, stopped caring what people thought about my choices. I dated casually for a while, nothing serious. Just getting to know different people and figuring out what I was actually attracted to versus what felt safe or exciting in the moment. I learned I had a tendency to mirror whoever I was with, becoming interested in their interests instead of maintaining my own. I worked on staying myself even when I was with someone else. About a year after the divorce, I ran into Jake. He was in Seattle for work, grabbed coffee at the same place I was working on my laptop. We saw each other across the room, and there was this moment where neither of us knew what to do. He came over. Hey, I said. How are you? Good, better, you? Yeah, better too, therapy helps. He smiled at that. Good, I'm glad you're getting help. We talked for a few minutes, surface level stuff. He'd started dating someone, said it was early but good. He seemed happy, or at least content. I told him about my new job, my pottery class. He seemed genuinely interested. I'm sorry, I said before he left, for all of it. You deserve someone who was sure about you, and I wasn't, even though I wanted to be. I'm sorry too, he said, for not hearing what you were trying to tell me. You were saying you were struggling, and I made it about me instead of trying to understand. You had every right to be hurt. Yeah, but I could have handled it better. Could have tried to work through it instead of just ending things. We stood there in this weird space of mutual understanding and regret. The marriage was over and we'd both moved on, but there was something healing about acknowledging we'd both made mistakes. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said, echoing what he'd told me on the phone a year ago. I think I'm getting closer, I said. After he left, I sat there thinking about everything that had happened. I destroyed a marriage, lost most of my friends' and family's respect, hurt multiple people, all because I'd been too afraid to be honest with myself about what I was feeling. I dressed it up as needing space to explore, but really I'd been running away from discomfort instead of dealing with it. But I'd also learned things I needed to learn. I'd figured out who I was outside of relationships, developed interests and opinions and goals that were mine alone. I'd learned to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. I'd learned that wanting more from life wasn't selfish, but expecting someone else to wait around while you figured it out was. The thing I haven't told anyone, the thing that still makes me feel terrible, is that I don't regret it. Not completely. Yes, I regret how I handled it. I regret hurting Jake and Marcus and my family. I regret not going to therapy earlier and dealing with my issues before they destroyed my marriage. But I don't regret leaving. That life, as good as it looked from the outside, was killing me slowly. I was disappearing into it, becoming less and less myself until I wouldn't recognize who I was anymore. And if I'd stayed, if I just pushed down those feelings and had a baby with Jake and kept playing the role of the content suburban wife, I think I would have ended up way worse off. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe it makes me a terrible person like everyone said. But sometimes I think honesty is messy and complicated and doesn't fit into easy narratives of right and wrong. Marcus texted me a few months ago, said he missed me, wondered if I'd figured things out yet, asked if we could try again. I said no, not because I don't care about him, but because I finally understand that I need to be okay by myself before I can be good with someone else. He deserves someone who chose him because he was right for them, not because they were running from being alone. He didn't respond, and I don't blame him. I've heard enough people trying to figure out my life. I don't need to add to the list. My parents and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. They still don't understand why I left Jake, probably never will. But they're trying, and I'm trying, and that's something. Most of our old friends are still Team Jake, which is fair. I was the one who blew everything up. I'm 32 now, living alone in Seattle, working a job I actually like, going to therapy weekly, trying to build a life that feels authentic instead of prescribed. Some days I still wake up and wonder what would have happened if I just signed the divorce papers and begged Jake to take me back. If I'd pushed down those feelings and convinced myself that comfort was enough. But then I remember that suffocating feeling, that sense of watching my life happen to someone else, and I know I couldn't have lived like that forever. Something would have broken eventually. Maybe it would have been worse than divorce. Maybe I would have had an affair for real or fallen into depression or just slowly faded into resentment and bitterness. I tell myself this story to make myself feel better about the choices I made. I don't know if it's true or if I'm just justifying selfish behavior. That's the thing nobody tells you about making big life changes. You never really know if you did the right thing. You just make the choice that feels most honest in the moment and hope you can live with the consequences. I said I needed space to explore. Jake gave me divorce papers instead. And maybe that was the best thing that could have happened, even if it didn't feel like it at the time. Because it forced me to actually do the exploring instead of keeping one foot in a marriage while pretending I was growing. Or maybe I'm still just making excuses for destroying something good because I was too restless and selfish to appreciate what I had. I honestly don't know anymore. All I know is that I'm here now, still figuring it out, still working on being okay with uncertainty and complexity and not having all the answers. And maybe that's the real truth. I asked for space to explore, got divorced, hurt people I loved, made a mess of everything, and I'm still not sure if I found what I was looking for. But at least now, I know who's doing the looking.